"I've been among them," answered Aragorn. "They are proud and willful, but they are true-hearted and generous in thought and deed, bold but not cruel, wise but unlearned, writing no books but singing many songs after the manner of the children of men before the dark years. They have long been the friends of the people of Gondor, though they are not akin to them. It was in forgotten years long ago that Eorl the Young brought them out of the north, and their kinship is rather with the Bardings of Dale and with the Beornings of the wood, among whom may still be seen many tall and fair, as are the riders of Rohan. At least they will not love the orcs."
I am Danny J.
And I am Joel N. And together we are
Keep on
Tolkien.
Woohoo.
And welcome back, everybody, for part 2 of season 5.
Yeah, and you know what this is, right? What? Well, no. Let's get into a little bit of what we've been. Let's do a little cliffhanger.
Sure, yeah. So part 2 of season 5. We took a break in between just because there's a lot been going on recently.
Yeah. What have we been up to?
So in the off season, I guess personally for me, there was me and my wife Mel went on our honeymoon.
Yeah, they went to Mexico.
We went down to Mexico. We found a cheap way to get down there and back, so that was pretty nice. And then we got back from Mexico, and we
what happened then?
So actually, we brought back some E. coli from Mexico, we found out. And then a handful of days after getting back from Mexico, we also got COVID.
I got it too. Yeah, we all
got COVID.
All got the COVID.
Me and Mal got back home and we're like, let's have everyone over to hang out. And then we all got COVID together.
Yep.
And that's
as it were.
So COVID plus E. coli at the same time, not fun.
That's what Joel was doing.
Yeah, that was the majority of my off season. I actually only started feeling better within the past week or two.
Yeah, he's still on the mend.
Well, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good now.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your off season like?
Just surviving COVID was one of the big ones. I've been playing with my nephew outside a lot. He likes to run through the sprinkler. So
Oliver.
Yeah.
He's
Oliver.
a ball of energy.
Yeah, we get ice cream a lot too. He's spoiled. And then, just getting ready for, just gearing up for KOT. You know what I mean? Staying sharp.
There's something else that's pretty exciting that's happened in the off season too. Maybe a good time to mention. We've got some KOT t-shirts.
KOT shirts.
KOT shirts.
Yes. So if you guys want your own very own t-shirt, we have several designs available. You can go to keep-on-tolkien-podcast.tmill. That's TEEMILL.com.
Yeah.
There'll be a link to that in the description.
Go ahead and check it out. We got a few t-shirt designs we've got up there, and we do plan on adding more to the roster, more t-shirts, and maybe even other kinds of merchandise. So go check out the store.
Yeah, we had a good time designing those t-shirts.
Yeah, this is a very exciting time for us now that we can actually mass produce and share.
Yeah, this T-Mill
merch with the world.
This T-Mill website seems pretty cool. So.
Get your KOT merch now.
Yeah. But today, what are we going to get into today?
So today, on the second half of season 5, the whole damn thing. The whole second half, all 6 episodes coming up here, including today, are all going to be Rohan-centric.
Yeah, Rohirrim-centric. We never talk about the Rohirrim.
Yeah, we after doing this for, almost 5, we're into our 5th season now, we realize we've been very light on our Rohan content.
In fact, only Eowyn episode exists, I think. That's it.
Yeah, and we mentioned people here and there, but otherwise, yeah, we really haven't given any attention to Rohan. And I mean, granted, sure, they are just a kingdom in the Third Age, but still, there's so much information.
Oh yeah,
out there.
It's never covered by the lay people. They don't know this stuff, so
yeah. So, part 2 of season 5, all 6 episodes, we will be talking about Rohan, the history of the kingdom, their battles, and their leaders and some of their heroes.
Yeah. Rohan's history was one of conflict and war. Whether it was the orcs of the White Mountains, the Dunlandings to the west, or fucking Saruman and Isengard.
Yeah,
Constant warfare.
Constantly, yeah. Saruman may have been one of the biggest threats they had.
Yeah, fuck that dude.
Asshole. So let's start off with some basic names for the kingdom itself. So we've got names and titles for Rohan. Some people call it the Mark, the Ritter Mark, the Mark of the Riders.
There's, of course, Rokan, which is a Rohirric version of the Elvish word Rokand, which means horseland. Of course, there's old Calinarden, which is the Gondorian or the Numenorian word for it. And then Rohan, of course, which is Sindarin for horse country.
Yeah, and some names for the peoples of Rohan. They're called the Rohirrim, most commonly, which is Sindarin for horse lords.
The Aerolingus, which means the followers of Aerol. Did I say that correctly?
I think so.
Cool. And then, of course, the Eothade, which means horse people. That's my favorite, I think, the Eothade.
Yeah, so in order to really cover the Kingdom of Rohan properly, we really have to go back in time a little bit and talk about where their people originated from. And to do that, we have to talk about the Eothade as a people.
Well, the Eothade, of course, they originated from a race of the Northmen who flourished in the Vales of the Anduin and later the Northern Mirkwood about Third Age 1856 to 2510.
Yeah, so just in general, the Rohirrim and their people, they're all very Third Age centric. Yeah, it's one of the later kingdoms of men.
They kind of break away from this proto group called the Northmen, and they all become, by the Third Age, you got a bunch of different groups based on these guys.
Yeah, so during this time in the Third Age, the Edain occupied part of Rhovanion, the lands east of Greenwood the Great, and west of the inland sea of Ruin, and south of the Kelduin. So some in Gondor believed that the Eothade were descendants from the House of Hador.
In the Eothade, they gleefully accept this belief as their own, which strengthened their friendship with Gondor, because they're like, hey, yeah, that is us.
Yeah, we're kind of like distant...
Yeah, we're cousins here.
Distant cousins, sort of. Yeah, so they loved that, giving some camaraderie to their relationship.
Yeah, they're kin, technically.
Yeah, so the Northmen of Rhovanion, they were men of the House of the Hador, and they were men of the House of Hador who actually decided not to join the Edain and Beleriand far back in the First Age. So they kind of they're a little separate from the Gondorians in a way.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is they kind of had that same thing like with the elves. When the elves were moving, they split. Right, so like these men of Rhovanion are the remnants of the House of Hador that never decided to go to Beleriand.
Yeah, so there's a little more separation between the Eothade and the Gondorians than I think they care to really acknowledge, but they love the camaraderie there.
Yeah. It totally happened at the same place as the elves, too.
Yeah.
That's where the Nandor split out. They looked at the Misty Mountains and they're like,
It was basically the same journey. They were all going westward, and they get to a line of mountains, and some of them are like, no,
we'll stay here.
We don't want to deal with that right now.
Yeah.
So these Northmen who would become the Eothade, they were in fact more closely akin to the Beornings and to the men of Dale than Gondorians.
Yeah. So these guys, they're considered to be part of the middlemen, who are not directly descended from the men of Numenor, the so-called high men.
The Dunedain.
The men of the west.
So they're not Dunedain, technically.
But they also never serve Sauron, so they're good. They're clean.
Yeah, so they're somewhere in the middle. They're some of the good middlemen out there.
They got a clean conscience, you know what I mean?
So while never really united under one single king, the Northmen of Rhovanion nonetheless were allies of Gondor, as we mentioned, and many of the great princes of the Rhovanion Northmen, they and their kin would serve the armies of Gondor.
Because of this, the ruling house of Gondor mingled with the Northmen during the reign of King Eldacar, which was 235 years. That's a long reign. From Third Age 1255 to 1490. And some Northmen actually intermarried with the Dunedain of the south and were eventually considered men of Gondor.
Yeah, so there was definitely a lot of intermingling between the peoples.
Yeah.
So in the late 19th century of the Third Age, after the Battle of the Plains, which was in 1856, the region of Rhovanion was invaded by the group known as the Wain Riders, and the people in that region were enslaved.
To escape this fate, many of the Northmen fled Rhovanion, some north to Dale and some south to Gondor. So that's where they kind of conglomerated. Again, a northern group and a southern group.
Yeah, because of this invasion, now they're split up even more.
Mm-hmm.
So around this time is when a character known as Marwhini, son of Marhari, leads one such band of refugees north between the eastern bank of the Anduin and the western eaves of Mirkwood. So right between Mirkwood and the river, essentially, out in those nice plains. And along their way traveling here, they were joined by additional refugees who had fled through the forest.
Yeah.
And they ended their journey and settled down in these vales of Anduin between the Carrock and the Gladden Fields. And this is just kind of where they set up their camp.
Yeah, the beautiful part of Middle-earth.
It really is. And this is where they became known as the Eotheid, the horse people. And this was sometime around 1900 that they got this name.
In the 1970s of the Third Age, which is kind of like just as tumultuous as the 1970s in America.
Yeah, the 1970s and the Third Age of Middle-earth is kind of like the Wild West of Middle-earth.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you believed every movie you saw in the 70s was like how America actually was. That's what it'd be like, right?
But that's kind of what it is like in Middle-earth.
Yeah. So in the 1970s of the Third Age, after the downfall of the Witch King and his kingdom of Angmar, the current lord of the Eotheid, Frumgar, sometimes called Frungor in some texts, led his people north along the eastern banks of the Anduin.
Yeah, and there were really two main reasons for this relocation. One, they needed larger lands due to the growth of their group of people. And secondly, they were also becoming very concerned with the growing menace in Dol Guldur at the time. It really troubled them, and they wanted to get away from it.
Yeah.
So they went ahead.
Good.
So they went ahead and moved further north, and they settled near the sources of the Anduin and the southern edges of the Grey Mountains.
Yeah, and the chief settlement was called Framsburg, which lay in the valley between the rivers Langwell and Greylin.
And during their time in this far north region, the Eotheid and their horses multiplied, and they drove the remaining hillmen and orcs of Angmar out of that region. And during this time is when Fram, son of Frumgar, slew Scatha the dragon.
Yeah.
We've mentioned that a couple times before.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story. Yeah. It's a really cool story.
This, of course, won Fram great renown and great wealth from Scatha's horde. He also, as in many cases when it regards wealth, right, Joel?
Yes.
He earned the hatred of the dwarves of that region, who claimed the treasure of Scatha since it was the treasure that Scatha had stolen from the dwarves.
Yeah, so as we know, dragons, they do that. And who hoards treasure other than dragons? Usually dwarves.
You know.
So dragons like to, they have a track record of stealing treasure from dwarves.
Yo.
So if you ever come upon a dragon hoard, there is a high likelihood that it is dwarvish treasure.
That's true.
But yeah, so that kind of pissed off the dwarves because they're like, I mean, this was our treasure. But we've got a excerpt about this here.
Thus Fram won great wealth, but was at feud with the dwarves who claimed the hoards of Scatha. Fram would not yield them a penny, and sent to them instead the teeth of Scatha made into a necklace, saying, "Jewels such as these you will not match in your treasures, for they are hard to come by." Some say that the dwarves slew Fram for this insult. There was no great love between the Eotheid and the dwarves.
No.
Yeah.
No, the dwarves tend to piss off a lot of other races, it's true. The elves, the Eotheid.
Yeah.
I mean, even when Aragorn and, the three hunters, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, when they come across some Rohirrim the first time they set foot in the country, and,
Gimli's the one talking shit to the Rohirrim.
Gimli's getting all sassy, and Éomer's not down for that shit. He's like, I'm not about to let this fucking dwarf. He's like, what do you say? I cut off your head if it stood a little bit
further from the ground. Yeah.
They don't like dwarves much.
Yeah. We're going to get actually more into the story in one of the future episodes in this run here, guys, in Heroes of the Rita Mark.
Yeah, we'll talk a little more about Fram and Scatha, so stay tuned.
Yeah. Now let's talk about something very important to the Rohirrim.
Yes.
And that is, of course, their horses. Like horse girls from middle school, they just love their horses, man.
It's a huge part of their culture and just part of their heritage, too, all the way back to the Eotheid. It starts with the Eotheid, this love of horses.
Mm-hmm.
So about 5 centuries of relative peace and prosperity follow for the Eotheid in the north after they move up north. And they become a numerous people with many farms and horses, as we had mentioned. And this is when they become known as the Horse Lords. And the horses of Rohan, the horses of this region, rather, they're renowned as being some of the best horses you can get. They're known for being fast and strong and having long endurance. Gandalf describes the horses of this region as, quote, "There are no horses like those that are bred in the great vale between the misty mountains and the white."
Boromir actually describes the horses of Rohan as, quote, "They love their horses next to their kin, and not without reason, for the horses of the Riddermark come from the fields of the north, far from the shadow, and their race as that of their masters, is descended from the free days of old.
So in the year 2501 of the Third Age, this is when the current chieftain of the Eotheid, named Leod, captures a white foal in the wilds, a young white horse. And this horse would grow to great stature, but remain wild and was not able to be tamed by any man.
When Leod decided to mount the horse, it bore him away from his stables and eventually threw him, whereupon Leod's head struck a rock and killed him.
Instant death.
Embarrassing.
So Eorl, son of Leod, took up lordship of the Eotheid after his death at the young age of 16 years old. And because he was so young when he becomes chieftain, this is when he gets his name, Eorl the Young. He was also tended to continue looking very young because of apparently his bright yellow hair.
Yeah, never went gray, apparently.
Never went gray. It was always that bright, bright yellow. But this is how he gets his name, Eorl the Young. And he's a huge part.
Huge character.
Huge character in the history of the Rohirrim.
We touched on him in the Unsung Heroes episode already.
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
So Eorl would grow up, he would go on to be the founder of the Kingdom of Rohan, and it's, of course, his very first king, and is the ancestor of what comes to be known as the House of Eorl, which is the house of all the kings of Rohan.
Yeah.
The kings of Rohan have to be from that house.
Yeah, all three lines, right, are from the king of...
That's right, yep.
Yeah. After Eorl took up the leadership, he was determined to find that white horse that killed his father, damn it.
Yeah, and this kind of leads us into the subject of the Mieras. This is where they kind of come into the history of Rohan.
Them special horses. Eorl eventually found and confronted the stallion, but rather than slay it, Eorl commanded that the horse give up its freedom and serve him as weregild for the killing of his father Leod.
And the horse willingly submits and is renamed Feloroth.
He's just like, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, he's like, oh, okay. You know what, man? I'm sorry.
Like, you clearly got a lot of issues. You tracked me out here for years. I'm going to just go ahead and submit to you. You scare me. Yeah.
And Feloroth would go on to become one of the greatest horses to have ever lived and was said to understand the speech of men. And in later years, after the Eotheid migrated south into the regions of Rohan, Feloroth fathered the race of horses, nearly great as himself, that became known as the Mieras.
And the Mieras, they were noble horses that lived as long as a man, had extraordinary strength and intelligence, and they could even understand the speech of men.
Yeah, throughout the history, they would only allow themselves to be ridden by the Lord of the Mark or his sons.
But of course, this long tradition was broken by Gandalf, who manages to tame the greatest of the Mieras, Shadowfax.
Shadowfax.
We got a little excerpt about Shadowfax here. This is a good one.
He bade me take a horse and be gone, and I chose one much to my liking, but little to his. I took the best horse in his land, and I have never seen the like of him. Then he must be a noble beast indeed, said Aragorn. True indeed, said Gandalf, and he might have been foaled in the morning of the world. The horses of the Nine cannot vie with him. Tireless, swift as the flowing wind. Shadowfax they called him. By day his coat glistens like silver, and by night it is like a shade, and he passes unseen. Light is his footfall, never before had any man mounted him. But I took him, and I tamed him, and so speedily he bore me, that I reached the Shire when Frodo was on the Barrow Downs, though I had set out from Rohan only when he set out from Hobbiton.
And this is where we really got into it today, guys, with the writing of this outline. We
were reviewing that, and we were like, hold on.
We were just like, hold the phone. We need to see how fast this horse is.
Right, so he reached the Shire from Rohan by the time Frodo reached the Barrow Downs from Hobbiton.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so we had to break that down into like time and miles. So
yeah. So it's 620 miles from where Shadowfax was tamed to Sarn Fort, which is the border of the Shire.
Yeah, and apparently Gandalf did that in 5 days' time.
That's an average of 124 miles a day.
That's crazy.
On a horse. On a horse, dog. The average trail horse in decent shape can withstand a journey of about 50 miles a day. That's about 80 clicks for you kilometer people.
For our metric friends.
Yeah, in one day. And while a fit competitive horse might have the endurance to travel up to 100 in one day.
Yeah, double
Maybe,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, at best, like a super fit horse. So Shadowfax was just above and beyond even the fittest of horses that we would know of in the real world.
Yeah, 124 miles a day over rough terrain.
Yeah. That's insane. That's crazy. That's a fast and swift
horse. Yeah, we found this whole article where somebody had broken down by day they called it the Great Ride of Gandalf or something.
Some guy was just fascinated with this mention of Gandalf's journey in this short of time. He's like, hold on a second.
Yeah, and he had to map it out between every point.
Crazy shit.
Well, then the Shire is 100 miles from Sard Ford.
Yeah.
Or not the Shire, Hobbiton.
Hobbiton, yeah. Miles so he traveled 620 miles to Sarn Ford, and then another 100 miles after that.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah, crazy shit. Gandalf and Shadowfax. Shadowfax is an amazing horse.
Yeah.
So this will bring us kind of up into the actual history of the Foundation of Rohan as a kingdom itself.
Yeah. And, of course, you can't talk about that. It's kind of a nation born of war, in a way.
Right.
You got to talk about the Battle of the Field of Calibrant. And this was in the year TA 2509. Errol received summons from the steward of Gondor, Cirion, pleading to help with as large of an army, with a large army of particularly fierce Easterlings called the Balcoth. They had invaded the province of Calenarden and threatened to overrun it.
Yeah, Errol was, he surprised even the Aaron rider from Gondor that brought this message by basically instantly agreeing to come to the aid of Cirion. Gondor wasn't sure if he was going to, come down to help him. The Aaron rider wasn't sure, but Errol was like, yes,
do this.
We will. And though Errol was very young, he agreed so quickly because he wisely perceived that if Gondor should fall, all the lesser realms of men, including themselves, west of the Anduin, would eventually fall as well. So he's like, we got to keep up our main defenses here.
Our buffer zone against Mordor.
Right. Yeah. So, he was all down about helping. So Errol gathered all the men of the Eothed that could possibly be spared, leaving his own land at risk of invasion, and rode south to the aid of Gondor.
Despite not having enough troops, Cirion still decided to meet the Easterling army in battle on the field of Calibrant. I think he just kind of wanted to get away from population centers, so he was like...
Yeah, at this point, Cirion down in Gondor, he's like, we need to redirect this terrible blow.
Invasion, yes. Believing that there would not be enough time for the Eothed to help his army. So he's like making his last stand at the field of
he's
Calibrant.
Like, rather than destroying the city, let's just do a suicide mission out in a field.
Out in a field somewhere, and hopefully enough people can escape and shit.
Right.
Cirion's army was worsted, and all hope seemed lost when an army of orcs came upon the flank of the army of Gondor. So now,
even worse.
We're dealing with the Balcoth, who are trying to actively take over your region, and then the orcs are just getting an attack of opportunity.
Yeah, all of a sudden they're just jumping in on this. So it's looking very, very bad for Gondorian Cirion and his army.
Yeah.
But at this moment is when Eorl the Young and his cavalry thundered out of the north, unlooked for, and smashed into the rear of the Easterlings.
Their arrival completely reversed the tides of the battle, and the riders of the Eothe drove the Balcoth into the Anduin, saving Gondor's army.
Yeah, this battle probably sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah, did we cover this already?
Well, I'm just saying the general setup, like Gondor's in trouble, they're going to fall, and then all of a sudden, an entire huge group of Eothed, unlooked for, a horseman.
I never realized that
come from the north and obliterate.
Oh my God, Joel, you just blew my mind. Yeah, this totally mirrors the
Pelennor Fields.
Pelennor Fields, and
or rather, Pelennor mirrors this, since Pelennor comes later, I guess.
And like after the Battle of Pelennor Fields is when the friendship was renewed again.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, dude.
Dude.
Bing, bang, boom.
That was, You go next. You blew my mind.
Yeah, so their arrival completely reversed the tides of the battle, and the riders of the Eothed drove the Easterlings into the Anduin, saving Gondor. And after this, Cirion realizes that the Eothed, as a people, need more room to flourish, and they clearly deserve more respect.
These guys.
And that they would clearly make a very strong ally to Gondor in the future, especially against the growing threat of Sauron and the continued harassment of the Easterlings. So he's like, all right, here's a good ally. So in the year 2510, as a reward for their aid in the battle, Cirion gives the Eotheid the land of Calenarden to live in.
Which is basically the whole northern half of the Gondorian kingdom.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
So
or like a third of it,
it's the far northern part of the Gondorian kingdom that basically gets all the way up to around the Misty Mountains and in that area, in the Gap of Rohan and such.
Yeah.
Yeah, that area had actually recently been depopulated by a plague.
The plague. Well, we wouldn't know anything about that.
No. Fucking plague. So there's just this wonderful open country land up north, and Cirion decides to give it over to the Eotheid. And Eorl the Young, he was so impressed and grateful for Cirion's gift that he swore to the steward the oath of Eorl.
Yeah, and if that sounds familiar, it's probably because we covered it in episode 58. That was Doom Trilogy Part 1, Oaths.
Yeah, we love the Doom Trilogy, guys. Go check it out.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out that Doom Trilogy yet, we're really proud of that.
Yeah, check out 58, all the oaths.
Yeah. Eorl actually sent his army back north for their wives and kin. Coming into the land of Calenarden, the Eotheid became known as the Rohirrim by the Gondorians, and they named their new realm the Mark of the Riders, and themselves the Eolingus.
And this is when Eorl becomes the first king of Rohan.
Yeah.
And there you have it. That is the official founding,
But
the very beginning of the Kingdom of Rohan.
Now let's get into some real nerd shit. Let's get into some geography.
Yeah, so let's actually take a minute to talk about the plot of land that they just got. So the countryside of Rohan is described as a land of pastures and lush, tall grassland. The lands are frequently described as, quote, seas of grass. And we've got a gorgeous excerpt about this land.
The ridge upon which the companions stood went down steeply before their feet, the east wall of Rohan. So ended the Emyn Muil, and the green plains of the Rohirrim stretched away before them to the edge of sight. At the bottom they came with a strange suddenness upon the grass of Rohan. It swelled up like a green sea to the very foot of the Emyn Muil. The falling stream vanished into a deep growth of cresses and water plants, and they could hear it tinkling away in green tunnels, down long gentle slopes towards the fens of the Entwash Vale, far away. They seemed to have left winter clinging to the hills behind. Here the air was softer and warmer, and faintly scented, as if spring was already stirring, and the sap was flowing again in herb and leaf. Legolas took a deep breath, like one that drinks a great draught after a long thirst in barren places. Ah, the green smell. It is better than much sleep. Let us run.
Yeah, the land always just sounds gorgeous.
Yeah, the Rohirrim, like the lands of Rohan, I always wanted to visit those locations in New Zealand the most, I think. Because like the mountainy places are like whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to hike up mountains.
You can see mountains places.
But like, yeah, the wide open grasslands of the Rohirrim, I need to see it.
Beautiful. So, Karen Wynne Fonstad, whom we've referenced multiple times in the past, she wrote a wonderful Atlas of Middle-earth with some of the most detail and most accurate detail we've come across.
Yeah, it's our fave.
And in the Atlas of Middle-earth that she wrote, she calculated that Rohan is about 52,763 square miles. That's 136,656 kilometers squared. And that's a pretty big country land. That's slightly larger than England itself.
Yeah. The kingdom is primarily divided into two regions, the Eastmark and the Westmark, and they are each led by a marshal of the kingdom.
Rohan's capital is Edoras, which lies in a small but populous region in the center south of the kingdom, known as the Fold.
Let's talk about the borders. Let's go all the way around this bitch and explain exactly where it is.
For you geography nerds who really want to know, hey, tell me exactly
where it is, dude.
Tell me right where it is on a map. Here you go.
Here you go, Kyle. I imagine your name is Kyle. So Rohan is bordered to the north by Fangorn Forest and by the river Anduin, called Langflood by the Rohirrim.
To the northeast, it's bordered by the Emyn Muil. After the War of the Ring, the kingdom is actually extended further north and northeast towards Lothlorien.
To the east, the border is the river Entwash and the Meering Stream, which separates Rohan from the Gondorian province of Anorion.
To the south, the border is the White Mountains, and to the west, the border is the rivers Adorn and Eisen. where Rohan borders the land of the Dunlandings.
To the northwest, just under the southern end of the Misty Mountains, lies the walled green circle of Isengard, and that's kind of the...
Very close by.
Yeah.
That's like their neighbor, basically.
Yeah.
Closest neighbor is Isengard.
Well, because the Númenóreans built Isengard to, like...
Watch the gap, right?
Wasn't it halfway between North and South Kingdom at one point? Or something like that? It was, like, in the borders of the North and South Kingdom?
I think that was the idea.
Yeah. But Isengard, it was originally built by Númenóreans.
Mm-hmm. So near Isengard, in the area where the Misty Mountains and the White Mountains drew near each other, is the region that we all know as the Gap of Rohan. Basically, the main way of getting from east to west.
The Gap of Rohan.
Rather than crossing the mountains, let's take the Gap of Rohan.
The Rohirrim, they had few cities, instead preferring to dwell in small villages or farms near where the horses grazed. But the capital of Rohan is the most fortified town, and that is Edoras, and it's on a hill in the valley of the White Mountains.
Yeah, Edoras is actually an Old English word for enclosures. And the town of Edoras was built by Rohan's second king, King Brago, son of Eorl the Young. The hill on which Edoras is built stands in the mouth of the valley known as Harrowdale, right near where the river Snowbourne flows, and it flows past the town, down on its way towards the Entwash.
The town is protected by a high wall of timber, and outside the gates of town along the roads are the barrows of the past kings of Rohan.
Yeah, these graves are known for being covered by a very specific flower native to Rohan called, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce it correctly, the Simbelmune.
I think you got it.
Simbelmune.
And that is also known as Evermind. It is also said that they blossom in all seasons, year-round, and that they grow specifically where dead men rest. It kind of reminds me of the poppies of Flanders Fields. Remember we used to, for Veterans Day, you'd buy the poppies, remember?
I don't remember
those
that.
little paper poppies.
Oh, sure, okay.
Yeah, it's like a symbol of Flanders Fields.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, so at the center of Edoras, at the top of the hill, is the Hall of the Kings of Rohan, known as Meduseld.
Meduseld!
And this hall is pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's one of the most significant architectural achievements of the Rohirrim.
Yeah, it really is. You may know this is the place where Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and Gandalf go to meet Theoden in the Two Towers.
They got to unarm. They got to disarm to go in there.
Right.
Remember? Meduseld is a large hall that served as the house for the king and his kin, a meeting hall for the king and his advisors, and a gathering hall for ceremonies and festivities. It's a pretty much, it's like the Metrodome used to be.
Yeah, it's the everything
you use
hall.
it for whatever, yeah.
Yeah, the real-life word Meduseld is actually, I should say in real life, the word Meduseld is actually an Old English word for mead hall. And within the canon of Lord of the Rings, the word Meduseld is meant to be a loose translation of an unknown Rohirric word that has the same meaning, mead hall.
Mead hall, yeah. We were just talking about with our friend Gordon from Scotland that we've never had mead. He said he might send us some.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
It's like made from honey, apparently.
It's supposed to be sweet.
Yeah, I've never had it. I would be very interested.
I'd love to try some genuine.
Yeah, some good meat. Yeah, because I wouldn't know where to start as an American, right?
Yeah.
I
have no idea.
No idea. The building of Meduseld was ordered by the second king of Rohan, Brago, son of Eorl, and it was completed in the year Third Age, 2569.
So at the feast of the celebration of its completion, Baldur, son of Brago, made a famous vow to tread the paths of the dead, and goes on to never return from the paths of the dead.
Sorry.
Yeah, a little fun fact about the celebration of the creation of Meduseld.
Yeah, little sad side story there.
Yeah, they actually find Brago's body in Return of the King, don't they?
Yeah, when they take the paths of the dead during the War of the Ring, they find a body that is like mailed up and it's got a saddle with him or bridle with him or something still.
And it said he was like still clawing like at the walls trying to get out at the door or something. Yeah. Scary stuff.
Yeah, because as we later learned in our research, they broke his legs and left him to die, right?
Yeah. Some unknown enemy assailed him on the paths of death, broke his legs, and left him to die.
Fun.
It's sad shit.
Yeah.
But back to Meduseld.
Yeah. Meduseld was known for its bright yellow thatched straw roof, which made it appear as if it was made out of gold when seen from afar.
Yeah, and because of this, it became known as the Golden Hall.
Inside the hall, the roof was held in place by rows of richly carved pillars, and the floor was as rich as the rest of the hall, carved and inlaid with colored stones.
I loved the description of the colored stone floor. It always sounded so cool.
Yeah.
To one end of the hall stood a dais on which sat the throne of the king of Gondor, or the king of Rohan,
rather.
King of the Mark. And in the center of the hall was a great, huge fireplace. And the ceiling of the hall was actually described as having louvers to basically help remove the smoke from this massive fireplace.
Oh,
Louvers.
Okay. Louvers? Yeah, I'm not sure how to say that word. Louvers. French people, let us know. The walls of the hall were richly decorated with tapestries, depicting the history and legends of the Rohirrim as well.
And the doors of the hall were richly carved with creatures that bore jewels for eyes.
And outside of those doors stood a pair of gold pillars. And we got a little excerpt from Joel about this.
"Speak, Legolas," said Gandalf. "Tell us what you see there before us." Legolas gazed ahead, shading his eyes from the level shafts of the new-risen sun. I see a white stream that comes down from the snows," he said. "Where it issues from the shadow of the vale, a green hill rises upon the east. A dike and mighty wall and thorny fence encircle it. Within there rise the roofs of houses, and in the midst, set upon a green terrace, there stands aloft a great hall of men. And it seems to my eyes that it is thatched with gold. The light of it shines far over the land. Golden, too, are the posts of its doors. There men in bright mail stand, but all else within the courts are yet asleep." "Edoras, those courts are called," said Gandalf, "and Meduseld is that golden hall. There dwells Theoden, son of Thengel, king of the Mark of Rohan." Yeah, Meduseld is actually believed to have been based off of the mead hall from Beowulf.
Beowulf comes up again.
Yeah, and that hall was called the Heorot. But yeah, there's a lot of Beowulf inspirations with Tolkien. And they know that people are pretty sure this is based off of Beowulf, especially since Tolkien included a line that Legolas says that's a direct translation.
Yeah, just lifted straight from Beowulf.
Lifted straight from Beowulf, yeah. So Legolas describes Meduseld in that excerpt as, he says, the light of it shines far over the land, which is a direct translation of the Beowulf line. Oh, can you pronounce that?
I can try like an asshole. Let's do it.
You be the asshole.
Yeah. Lixte se leoma ofra landa fella.
Yeah,
I speak regular English, so I suppose it's the same way to pronounce it.
Yeah, the light of it shines far over the land. Yeah. So some cool Beowulf inspirations thrown in there.
Let's talk a little bit about the people of the region, the Rohirrim.
Yeah, we got the founding and some geography. Let's talk about those people. That's a huge part of any kingdom is the people.
Yes, of course, because without it, it would be...
It wouldn't be a kingdom.
Yeah, it'd really be just empty buildings and stuff. The Rohirrim were tall, blonde, and mostly blue-eyed people.
The men were large, husky, and handsome, while the women were particularly beautiful. They were heroic, noble, brave, strong-willed, and fiercely independent, remaining within their own language and culture. And we've got a description of the Rohirrim here by Aragorn.
"What do you know of these horsemen, Aragorn?" asked Gimli. "I have been among them," answered Aragorn. "They are proud and willful, but they are true-hearted and generous in thought and deed, bold but not cruel, wise but unlearned, writing no books but singing in many songs, after the manner of the children of men before the dark years. They have long been the friends of the people of Gondor, though they are not akin to them. It was in forgotten years long ago that Eorl the Young brought them out of the north, and their kinship is rather with the Bardings of Dale and with the Beornings of the wood, among whom may still be seen many men tall and fair, as are the riders of Rohan. At least, they will not love the orcs."
True enough. They fucking hate orcs.
Yeah, fuck orcs.
So the Rohirrim's entire culture, as we mentioned before, was pretty much all based around breeding and trading of their horses. And their horses were very, very important assets in their daily lives.
Oh, yeah.
For example, the term Riders of Rohan and Riders of the Mark are commonly used to refer to their mounted soldiers. Their soldiers often used horses as a huge part of their army.
Oh yeah, and they highly valued the Vala Orome, the hunter, whom the Rohirrim call Bema.
Bema, the hunter. And the Rohirrim had few cities, as we mentioned. They usually dwelt in small villages and farms near to their horses because their horses were such a large part of their culture.
Oh yeah, you got to be near grazing lands.
Yeah, so let's jump into a little bit of their military. So the Rohirrim's military was commanded by the marshals. The first marshal of the Riddermark was the highest military rank and commanded the muster of Edoras. The muster of Edoras being basically the riders that protected the capital of Edoras and the surrounding lands.
Yeah. In his youth, King Theoden had led the riders of the muster of Rohan himself, so that there was no need for a first marshal.
He's just like, I can do this.
I got this. I'm bored in here anyway.
Yeah.
A man can only drink so much mead, you know?
Yeah, dude, fucking King Theoden, he was all about getting shit done. During the War of the Ring, apparently there wasn't even a first marshal just because that was basically King Theoden.
Yeah, and the second and the third marshals, they had no fixed duties, and their roles often changed according to the needs of the time.
Yeah, the second marshal of the Riddermark was based around the area of Helm's Deep, and the third marshal of the Riddermark was based out in Aldburg and in the Fold. After the War of the Ring, a new rank called Marshal of the Eastmark was created by Eomer for Eastern Rohan. Yeah, after Eomer becomes king, he creates that, and he names the first rider as Marshal of the Eastmark to be his old lieutenant, Elfhelm, who is fucking awesome.
Unsung hero.
Unsung no more.
Yeah. Under the marshals were the riders of Rohan, and the riders were divided into 100 Aorids.
Yeah, and a single full Aored is defined as 120 horsemen, including its captain. So that means the full muster of the riders of Rohirrim, with all of their Aorids, was at least 12,000 strong, if not many more.
How many hooves is that?
12,000 times 4?
I don't know what the answer to that is.
Hold on. We can do this. We've got technology.
444,000, right?
It's 12,000 times 4, 48,000. We could have done that in our heads.
Oh, yeah. We're old now. Our brains are mush.
What's 1 plus 2? Calculator.
I can remember all this Tolkien shit, but I can't remember basic math. Yeah.
48,000.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hooves
a lot
trampling
of
the
hooves.
ground. Yeah, and that 12,000, that doesn't even include their levied infantry, the people on foot.
Feats.
Yeah, on feats. Yeah, such as those soldiers that Erkenbrand led at the Battle of the Hornburg. So we know that they have levied infantry. So they're all about their military.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some real-life inspirations for the Rohirrim.
Yeah, I thought this was some interesting information.
Yeah, the Rohirrim, they strongly resemble the ancient Anglo-Saxons, who Tolkien was particularly obsessed with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he studied that shit. He studied their languages.
And the Anglo-Saxons, they were a Germanic people who invaded and conquered Britain around the 5th century A.D.
Yeah, they're basically comprised of the Angles, the Saxons, and the Utes. Jutes,
I think, because I think isn't the Jutland Peninsula named after them in Denmark? Yeah,
could very well be. Your geography and history is usually a little better than mine.
I don't know if I might be fucking that up. I don't know, but Jutland, yeah.
Yeah, as we mentioned, Tolkien, he was a distinguished professor of Anglo-Saxon language and Old English and things like that. So that was just his whole life.
Yeah.
And so the fact that the Rohirrim resemble the Anglo-Saxons, it's not terribly surprising.
No. Yeah,
and they resemble the Anglo-Saxons in many ways. Mm-hmm. First of all, in appearance, the Rohirrim are fair-skinned, mostly blonde-haired and blue-eyed.
Just like the Anglo-Saxons.
They have a lot of cultural similarities, like, for example, the type of armor the Rohirrim use. They're warriors. They're usually mail of some kind, both chain or scaled mail, and they also have a strong reverence for the sword.
Yeah, they're a blade culture.
Yeah, very much so. The sword is an expensive and yet very, very symbolic weapon that's usually given names and passed down throughout generations. So there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Rohirric armies are also known to favor the shield wall, which was a common strategy employed by the Anglo-Saxons.
There you go.
Finally, common names given to the people of Rohan tend to resemble Old English names.
Yeah, for instance, like Eomer.
Yeah, that's found in the Beowulf saga, and his name means horse famous in Old English.
Famous for horses.
He's really loved horses.
He's famous amongst the horses. They love him.
Mm-hmm.
Love. Horse love.
Horse love.
So there is actually one aspect of the Rohirrim that is distinctly different from the ancient Anglo-Saxon tribes, and that is essentially the Rohirrim's affinity for horses and beasts of warfare, and their superb use of cavalry. That is very unlike the Anglo-Saxons.
Right.
Who were the Anglo-Saxon tribes.
Sure-footed people.
Yeah, predominantly foot soldiers.
So let's talk about the language. We would be remiss to not talk about language.
Right, yeah. The language is a big part of their culture and their kingdom.
Always is, yeah. And the Rohirrim, they spoke Rohirric, which descended from the language of the Eotheid.
Yeah, it's very akin to the language of the Northmen of Ravania, naturally. That's where it came from. But it is also somehow related to Adonaic, the language of the Númenóreans.
Which I found fascinating.
Yeah, and that may have partially been why they figured they were somehow distantly related.
Yeah, because maybe like during the days of the Northmen when they were intermingling with Gondor, maybe Adonaic was spoken as a language up there. Trade language.
Yeah, exactly. That's who they're probably going to end up trading with. So.
Yeah, exactly. And we got a excerpt here from Joel, and it's a Legolas quote, because Joel loves Legolas so much.
Then Aragorn began to chant softly, in a slow tongue unknown to the elf and dwarf. Yet they listened, for there was strong music in it. That, I guess, is the language of the Rohirrim, said Legolas, for it is like to this land itself, rich and rolling in part, and else hard and stern as the mountains. But I cannot guess what it means, save that it is laden with the sadness of mortal men.
Yeah. In comparison to Westron, which is the common speech, Rohirric was mostly archaic and was not easily understood by the speakers of Westron.
However, the Hobbits, on the other hand,
the
Hobbits are known to share many words and linguistic roots with the Rohirrim. Reference back to episode 36 of ours, where we talk about Hobbits.
Oh, yeah. A great episode.
Yeah, we get a little bit into this, how a lot of the Hobbits' language came from the Eotheid, because Hobbits originated from the Vale of Anduin back around the time that the Eotheid were also there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, so, and it's known that at one time the Hobbits and the Eotheid did have contact with each other. It's in the history of the Eotheid. They even have words for Hobbits.
Yeah.
And as a result of this intermingling, the many old words and names in Hobbitish are derivatives of Rohirric words.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
The Rohirrim even had their own word for hobbits, Holbitla, which means hole builders.
Hole builders.
Yeah. I love when Theoden dies, he says to Merry, farewell, Master Holbitla. Yeah, it's super sad.
Yeah, we've got a little excerpt here about this.
Already I have seen many marvels since I left my house. And now here before my eyes stand yet another of the folk of legend. Are these not the halflings that some among us call Hobbitlan? But I will not deceive you. We know no tales about hobbits. There are no legends of their deeds, for it is said that they do little, and avoid the sight of men, being able to vanish in a twinkling.
Yeah, some really fun little bits of shared history between the Hobbits and the Rohirrim.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why Merry and Theoden bond so quickly.
Yeah, some cultural similarities. They like talking about similar things.
Yeah,
and
they love talking about shit,
and they have similar versions of respecting each other
and nature as well.
Mm-hmm. So when the lords of the Rohirrim would use Westron, the common speech, when they're not using Rohirrim. They would basically speak Westron in a very gracious, noble, and antique manner, very similar to the way the Gondorians did, because that's essentially where they learned their common speech from.
Sure. When the Rohirrim would write, they didn't often write, but they wrote using a Manish version of Cirth runes. But ultimately, the Rohirrim did not have much written literature, having a strong preference for oral tradition.
Yeah, they were all about songs and passing things down through word of mouth. So next we'll just kind of touch on the royalty of Rohan. They had a pretty extensive line. There were 3 different lines. The first line had 9 members, beginning with Eorl and ending with Helm Hammerhand.
Don't even bring it up, dude.
Dude, Helm is such a cool fucking character. We're actually going to talk a little more about him in a little bit here.
Yeah, Helm Hammerhand is great.
So the second line began with Freyolaf and went for 8 kings, all the way down to Theoden himself, up in the Third Age.
Yeah.
And then after Theoden's line unfortunately died off, because Theoden's son died, the third line began with his nephew, Éomer. And that brings us right into the Fourth Age. After Éomer, we know there was another king named Elfwine, but that's all that we have for the leaders of Rohan.
So let's get into a little bit of history here. And with history comes what, Joel?
War.
So let's talk about the war with the Dunlandings.
Yeah, this is one of the first major wars of the Rohirrim. And in fact, this is what we understand to be the subject of the coming War of the Rohirrim animated movie.
Yes.
When I say animated, I should say anime, actually. It's anime.
Yes.
And I'm actually really excited about this movie, you guys, because I think that this subject
so cool.
would fit an anime style so well.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be gnarly as fuck. And
I'm
really excited about it.
I'm hoping so. I almost have more excitement for that than the series.
Honestly, me too.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot more faith that they're going to do a really cool job with the War of the Rohirrim anime than this whole series. It's such a cool subject, and just making a Tolkien-related anime just
seems right.
It's a unique idea, and it feels so right.
Yeah.
So the war with the Dunlandings.
To the west of Rohan lived the Dunlandings. They were a native people who had been hostile against Rohan and Gondor for a long time.
Yeah, and after Gondor's former province of Calenarden was awarded to the Eotheod for their service during the Battle of the Field of Calibrant, the Dunlandings were driven out of that region by the Rohirrim.
Yep.
This new kingdom of people.
In this, caused the Dunlandings to kind of see them as like usurpers, and they developed a deep hostility to the new arrivals for stealing their lands.
Yeah, they saw that as their land if it was going to be anyone's.
Yeah, I mean, they were living there.
Yeah, they were.
They have a decent claim to the land in that they were living there.
Yeah, they're more or less the natives there. So, naturally now, the Dunlandings frequently raid Rohan and were always a source of trouble for the region. However, there did come a time when the Rohirrim and the Dunlandings learned to live side by side in a time of relative peace.
Fun. In the 28th century of the Third Age, a man known as Fricka, who had both Rohirrim and Dunlandish blood, rose in power among the Dunlandings and became their leader.
Yeah, and in the year 2754, this is when Fricka, drunken with pride, they said, he boldly rides to Edoras with a force of men behind him to attempt a forced meeting with the king of Rohan at the time, known as King Helm.
Yeah.
Oh, I fucking love Helm.
And Fricka began making demands to King Helm that Fricka's son Wolf should be wedded to Helm's daughter, which would no doubt give Fricka and his family power.
Clearly a power grab.
Yeah.
It's
not about love.
Clear to everyone, which is probably why he rode with a force behind him to sort of help persuade.
Yeah, be a little persuasive there.
Yeah. So, naturally, this just infuriated Helm, and he refused and insulted Fricka in front of his men.
Don't yell at me in front of the men.
So, humiliated, Fricka flew into an angry rage and nearly started like a bar fight right there in the hall. And, this just escalated further, and eventually Helm finally meets Fricka face-to-face outside of Edoras out in an open field for eventually, a showdown.
And after insulting him further, just talking more shit, Helm struck down Fricka with a single blow of his fist, killing him instantly. Yeah, this dude he's known for doing this, too. It's not the only time he does it.
No, man, this is like his thing. Yeah, and still furious, even after killing Fricka, Helm goes forward and proclaims all of Fricka's kin enemies of the Kingdom of Rohan.
So let's fast forward to 4 years later in 2758.
So striking him down, that's when he got the Hammerhand name, right? When he killed Fricka?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so after that, he gets the name Helm Hammerhand because he just fucking beats the shit out of people with his fists.
One punch man, right? 4 years later in 2758 of the Third Age. This is a time when Gondor could not help the Rohirrim. Wolf led an army to Rohan and took the capital of Edoras.
Yeah, during a time when they're not going to get any backup. So Helm fled Edoras at this time and fled for the mountain shelter known as the Soothburg, also called the Hornburg, the place we know later to become Helm's Deep.
Yeah, I wonder who they named it after.
Yeah, I wonder who.
Unfortunately, Helm and what was left of his people were forced to flee to the shelter of the Hornburg. And after a long and terrible winter fell upon the north of Middle Earth, it affected both sides, obviously.
Quite severely, yeah.
Yeah.
So in the Hornburg, Helm and his loyal remnants endured a never-ending siege. Not only that, but this siege lasted throughout what became known as the Long Winter.
Yeah. The Long Winter was an extremely cold and long-lasting winter, covering Eriador, Dunland, and Rohan, and it went from November of Third Age 2758 to March of 2758, which is hilarious.
To 59, rather.
To 59, excuse me, which is hilarious because that's Minnesota's winter.
Yeah, a 5-month winter.
Yes, that is our fucking winter. From November, even October, maybe even.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To March, maybe even April.
We've had our winter last from like mid to late October into April. We've even had snow in May one time.
Oh, yeah. We had snow. I remember when I was in between seasons when I went up north for a little bit. Grand Marais had ice storms.
Yeah.
This is in May.
You go up by the big lake and
or it was June 1st, I think. It was June 1st.
There's still ice up
Yeah.
there. But I mean, it's not a competition, I guess.
It's not a competition.
It's not a competition.
We
guys,
just saying that we would have survived the long winter just fine.
well, it's also known that not only being 5 months long, but the long winter was also particularly brutal with particularly cold weather and lots of snow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 5 months of particularly brutal winter is going to be pretty rough on anyone.
Sure.
But we will actually talk more about the long winter in more detail in the future. We're pretty determined to do an entire episode about that subject.
Yeah, because a lot of shit happens throughout the rest of the North in this time period, too.
So that's not going to be during this 6-episode run. That'll probably be next season, in season 6, we guess.
Yeah.
But during this time, during this long winter siege, this is when Helm and his people mount small counterattacks frequently. But in time, just being held down in the Hornburg for so long, his sons and all of his followers either died in battle, died from the cold, or straight up starved to death. It was...
Straight the fuck up, starved to death.
It was a disaster. Like, they went for the shelter of the Hornburg, and it's true, no one was going to break through that and get to them, but they were stuck.
Yeah.
All winter.
What are you going to eat? Yeah.
Exactly, and they all died off. It was really tragic.
Yeah. When the long winter finally ended, Freyolaf Hildeson, Helm's nephew, came down from Dunharrow with a small force and retook Edoras.
Yeah, and this is when Wolf is slain, and soon all the remaining enemy forces were driven out of Edoras with the help of Gondor, and whose forces could now come to their aid.
Yeah, just like normal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into a big event that we might know as the War of the Ring.
Yeah, you guys might have heard of this before.
Might have heard of it.
A little something. Yeah, so after that war, that pretty much brings us to the next war.
Next war? Up on the list? Next war? Yeah, so let's get into it.
Yeah, so around 2960 of the Third Age, this is when Saruman really starts to harass Rohan. And in 3014 of that age is when Saruman begins using his influence actively through the traitor Grim of Wormtongue to weaken King Theoden using some of his snaky witchcraft. Yeah.
It is also around this time that rumors begin to spread that the Rohirrim pay Mordor in tribute with horses.
Yeah, I found that apparently some suspect that rumor was started by Saruman to help weaken.
That would not surprise me at all, sir.
To help weaken their standing in the region and make it easier for him to take over.
Because when the three hunters meet Eomer, they mention that we heard that you pay horses to Mordor. He's like, yeah, I've heard that lie too.
Yeah, no, hell no. And then Aragorn even says he doesn't believe it. Like Boromir says he doesn't believe it, and Aragorn says I don't believe it any more than Boromir believed it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty nasty rumor, and some suspect it was started by Saruman.
Yeah,
that
would make total sense.
That's his kind of manipulation.
His kind of bullshit. Yeah. Though, despite these rumors, there have never really seemed to be any doubt that the Rohirrim are good people through and through. And then we got a quote. What is this from Gandalf? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is going to be read by Joel, so here we go.
Are men of Rohan still to be trusted, do you think? I asked Gwahir, for the treason of Saruman had shaken my faith. They pay a tribute of horses, he answered, and send many yearly to Mordor, or so it is said. But they are not yet under the yoke. But if Saruman has become evil, as you say, then their doom cannot be long delayed. He set me down in the land of Rohan ere dawn, but in Rohan I found evil already at work. The lies of Saruman and the king of the land would not listen to my warnings. He bade me take a horse and be gone. Then, said Aragorn, it grieves me more than many tidings that might seem worse to learn, that Sauron levies such tribute. It was not so when I last was in the land. Nor is it now, I will swear, said Boromir. It is a lie that comes from the enemy. I know the men of Rohan, true and valiant, our allies, dwelling still in the lands that we gave them long ago.
Damn, I love that Boromir is ready to, like, step to it. Just like, the Rohirrim they're dope. Like,
yeah, Boromir's ready to throw down.
Yeah, he's ready to throw down about it.
No, hell no, that's a lie.
No, these are my brothers. We fight in battle together. In TA 3019, that magic year, Saruman launched a full-scale invasion of Rohan with victories in the early battles, such as the Fords of Isen, where Theoden's son, Theodred, was killed.
Yeah, Saruman was later defeated in the Battle of the Hornburg, where the tree-like Huorns came out of the forest of Fangorn and helped completely wipe out any of Saruman's forces that had survived the battle.
On the heels of this victory, Theoden rode with an army to Minas Tirith and helped break its siege in the Battle of Pelennor Fields and killed the leader of the Haradrim.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, this battle really, the setup for this battle and the way that the Rohirrim come unlooked for and change the tide, very similar to the Battle of Calibrant, which is the battle where they first really became friends.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Unfortunately, at the Battle of Pelennor Fields is also where King Theoden famously dies, being killed when he's attacked by the Witch King and his horse falls and crushes his body.
Yeah, sadly.
You can see a little more information about that in our last episode, 61, The Witch King of Angmar.
Yeah, super popular episode. Thanks for making it so popular, guys.
Yeah, thanks for listening, folks. We love it. We love you.
We do. King Theoden was then succeeded by his nephew Éomer, beginning the third line of the kings of Rohan. And Éomer becomes known as Éomer Eodig, or sometimes Éomer the Blessed. During the reign of Rohan, he recovered from the hurts of the war and became rich in fruitful land again. I love Eodig, like Eodig.
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 Yeah, that sounds like a greeting.
We're going to be going to the movies later on. Eodig.
Eodig.
That's a good name.
So Éomer also rode with the armies of Gondor and the remaining free peoples to the gates of Mordor and took part in that final battle with the forces of Sauron. That battle that we know was a distraction, the Battle of the Black Gates.
Yeah.
And that's when Sauron was defeated and the ruling ring was destroyed. A wonderful point in time and a turning point in history.
Yes.
So after the War of the Ring, the rule of the stewards of Gondor was finally ended and returned to the king of Gondor. And This is when King Éomer and the new king of Gondor, Elisar, Aragorn II, this is when they renew the oath of friendship between Eorl and Cirion, and they reaffirmed the grant of Calenardon to the Rohirrim. At this point, I feel like that's kind of a moot point. Are you really about to take away the entire kingdom of land?
We want it back. Yeah, the steward made that deal. Bad deal. Sorry.
Bad deal. Get us out of that bad deal. We're taking your land back. But I mean, I get it. It's all about being friendship and stuff.
Ceremonial, yeah.
It's ceremonial. And I really love the relationship between the two kingdoms. It's great.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, one more fun little fact about Rohan. This is basically at the end of the Third Age going into the Fourth, where there's no longer any information about anything. But sometime during the Fourth Age, after the downfall of Sauron, this is when Gimli leads a party of dwarves from Erebor into Rohan to the glittering caves over in Helm's Deep, they known as Aglarond, and they settle there and they carve out the caves, the natural caves, and they hallow the beauty of the caves. And I think doesn't Gimli also
he serves as their lord.
He serves as their lord, and then isn't that also where he keeps the three strands?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, because that's his new house now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where he brings his 3 strands of Galadriel's hair, and that's where he encases them.
That's a jewel beyond all reckoning of value. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially like Silmarils 2.0.
Yeah.
3 jewels with her hair that has the light of the trees in them. Pretty cool. So those rest there in the glittering caves in Rohan.
In Rohan.
Yeah, so that's about all the history of Rohan that we've got for you today, folks.
Yeah. The history of the Kingdom of Rohan is actually more fleshed out than we ever thought it was, and it's very complete.
Yeah, we found out going through and making this episode that there is a lot of information, particularly for it just being a kingdom that popped up in the Third Age.
Right, yeah.
And wasn't in the Second
Didn't have
Age.
an ancient history
It
or
didn't
anything,
have an ancient history in the Second or First Ages. There's a lot of history about this kingdom.
And we think that the Rohirrim, they don't get enough credit for their strength and resilience, at least honestly from us.
Yeah, they're a very honorable kingdom and race of people, and this is one part of the reason why we're doing this whole second run, this six episode stretch of Rohan. Yeah, pay respects.
So yeah, guys, get ready for more Rohan. You'll hear about it for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah. The next 5 episodes after this, man. So strap your belts. It's gonna be some good shit.
Yeah, coming up next, we got Lesser Known Battles, Rohirrim Edition.
Yeah, we've had a Lesser Known Battles episode in the past, but now we're going to be talking about some battles
of the
Rohirrim that you might not know about.
All the time.
So tune in next week, folks.
Yeah, thanks for listening to KOT Podcast. Make sure you follow us on social media. Follow us on Twitter at KOT Podcast if you want to follow me. I'm not too active anymore, but I'm at Danny J, KOT.
Yeah, and feel free to follow us on Facebook if that's more your thing. That's facebook.com/official Keep on Tolkien. Also, while you're there, join the KOT Talk group. We tend to have some fun in there, sharing memes and just talking and chatting around.
Yeah. And follow us on Instagram at Keep on Tolkien Podcast.
And you can also find us wherever you get your podcast. You can find us on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, or anywhere else. Just go to your podcast subscriber and /Keep on Tolkien. Stay up to date on all of our new episodes.
And also be sure to join that Discord server. We have a lot of fun on the Discord server talking to you guys all the time. It's my during the week ritual is to just go and answer and fuck around on the KOT
I'd say
Discord.
the Discord server is probably our most frequently trafficked at this point too. There's a good amount of information. We talk a lot about the series coming up too.
Yep. Yeah, our Amazon series thread is pretty fucking cool. You should check it out.
It's bumping.
And we'll add an invite to the link, the description here.
Yeah, there are some very thought-provoking conversations that have come up on the Discord. I really enjoy it.
I really enjoy it a lot. And it's the easiest way to talk to us because we're always on fucking
We're
Discord.
always on Discord. Hands down.
Just even in our personal lives. But yeah, thank you for giving to the Patreon. You guys are heroes. That whole last fucking run was funded by you guys, just so you know.
Absolutely. Our patrons, a huge thank you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this, literally.
And if you want to check out our Patreon, it's www.patreon.com/KOT Podcast. Subscribe to Patreon and help support us because we are a 100% DIY podcast. And it all comes out of our pocket except for what you guys donate. And that helps so goddamn much.
It really does. It really helps supplement for us. It helps us bring new content and helps us try to keep up the same quality that you come to expect from your podcasts.
Yeah.
And subscribing on Patreon can unlock some exclusive content, some little fun bits from us. Also, we've had people contact us about doing one-time donations. If maybe subscribing on Patreon isn't your speed, maybe you're not going to be able to keep up with a regular monthly payment, we absolutely are willing to do one-time donations as well.
Yeah, that's fun as well.
Go ahead and shoot us an email on social media or however you like. We have PayPal along with all your other basic money lending services. So connect with us and we can definitely get something
Make it happen, and thank you so much if you do consider doing that. And also, don't forget to check out our new merch at keep-on-tolkien-podcast.tmill. That's TEEMILL.com.
Yeah, and we're going to be definitely adding more T-shirts to that over time, and maybe even some other types of merch. So keep your eyes posted.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I think people have been asking us about T-shirts for 5 years now?
Yeah, forever.
Yeah, for friggin' ever. And because we had our run that we made for that convention.
Mm-hmm.
But we never made a solid run for anybody else.
Yeah, so they weren't really ever openly available.
Yeah, there's a total, I think, in existence of 13 KOT shirts out there.
Somewhere out there in circulation.
Somewhere out there, yeah.
We personally own probably the majority.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I am and have been Danny J.
And I am Joel N. And as always, folks, keep on
Tolkien. Aure into Luva.